Hello, I'm Jacquie Molloy and welcome to today's All Access webinar. As we begin today's session, as always, let's first acknowledge the traditional custodians of the various lands where we are gathering. You can hold them in your mind or you might like to write them in the chat. Today, our team is on Wurundjeri land of the Kulin Nation, and we pay our respects to elders past and present and acknowledge the spiritual strength and resilience of Australia's First Peoples and their deep and enduring connection to country, the land, the sky and the water, and the animals who live there. Welcome. Today, our topic is ConnecTo and the 5 domains of spirituality and how they can inform the care we provide to older people. One of our research community, Dr. Bruce Rumbold, once said, "We are ourselves through our relationships." And what we will explore today will show that there are many different types and forms of relationships that each individual can have. So having said that, let me get started with sharing my screen because your special guest today is me. I'm the special guest. So let me just get this up for you. Discovering what's most important for an older person is really what it's all about when we're providing spiritual care. This is an image that we like to show when we're talking about spiritual care and ConnecTo, because it's really a beautiful observation exercise, the amount of information that you can glean from this photograph. And so I'd love you can put it in the chat if you like what you're thinking when you see this. I'd also like to introduce perhaps a new word for you. The word is apricity. And apricity is the feeling of the warmth of winter sun. And because of what this person is wearing, we can tell that it's chilly, it's possibly winter, but there is sun on their back. And we all know that feeling of being warmed by the sun during winter. You can also see this person's hands and their fingers. They seem weathered. And also there is dirt in the fingers and under the fingernails. So perhaps this person likes to work with earth in the garden perhaps, or on an allotment. And showing care to this little furry feline friend who's also enjoying apricity, enjoying the warmth of the winter sun and enjoying the caress, reaching up to really connect with that hand. These are all aspects of spirituality when we do a little bit of a deep dive. And we can think of spirituality as 5 domains. And these are the domains that we connect to. There's connection to self, connection to others, connection to nature, connection to creativity, and connection to something bigger than us. Let's start with the domain of self. Self, having a relationship with self. We can think of the question, who am I? The question that we can ask ourselves over the course of a lifetime and sometimes never really knowing how to answer, sometimes being very clear. But as our roles and relationships change, as our values and beliefs deepen, the answer to that question, who am I, might also alter. So it's not uncommon for those who are aging in aged care to reassess, who am I? It's also about practices and diagnoses, thinking about if you need extra time alone to recharge, That's a relationship to self, a connection to self. Also, diagnoses around neurodivergence inform self and relationship to self. The domain of others is the second. We're very social beings. And in the context of aged care, many older people will have lost many of their important relationships. And talking to someone about those who have died can be difficult, but so important, because despite the physical absence of some of these people, the relationships will be just as strong. And so we can't discount what invisible relationships look like. The person may not be there, but the foundation and love and security that that relationship represents may still be there. The relationship that an older person has with you or with a carer can be the enriching one, because it's through you that an older person may be able to consider what those people that they've lost really mean to them. The ability to talk about them is an important one. We've also got the role of community and culture when we think about the domain of others. Online groups are another one. Found family, really important to certain types of groups, be they cultural, from different language backgrounds, different cultural backgrounds. The domain of others is potentially one of the strongest forms of spirituality. It's where we get to really live our values and beliefs, is in that social connection with others. The third domain is the domain of nature, and nature extends to animals. And we know just how much animals can mean to many, many people. Not just pets, but watching birds, listening to birdsong. But we need to understand the role of animals to people in aged care, people receiving aged care, and the gift of connection that animals represent. Access to nature is important. It involves all the senses. And you think about that. We know sight, but also the smell. How we can taste sometimes the smell of something. Rich pine, the ocean. Also how we feel underfoot or with our arms, hands rather. You know, when you walk along a street and you see lavender, and the temptation to just rub your fingertips along the lavender and smell. You know, these are just such simple acts, but so evocative. Jasmine coming out in springtime on a warm wind, so evocative. Caring for nature is also a way that's been shown in many different projects and surveys to enhance restoration and promote well-being. So an opportunity to care for one potted plant or a square of veggie garden, of an allotment. All of these wonderful ways, caring for animals, being able to contribute either financially or through holding morning teas for raising of funds and awareness to protect and conserve animal communities. You know, all of these ways of connecting with nature are so important. There's also connection to country, of course, for First Nations people, and how critical that is for overall well-being. Let's look at the fourth domain, creativity. Now, this is an interesting one. All humans are creative, you know, not just art. We're not just talking about art. And humans have the need to create. Creativity is about a connection with the unconscious. And in that, it's quite common to come across people, you may be one yourself, where you say, oh, I'm not creative. I don't have that in me. Well, yes, you do. It's how limiting we think of the word creativity. You know, I've put some here on the slide: cooking, fashion, arranging spaces, writing, music, craft, but also having ideas, problem solving, using your imagination, being able to have a sense of playfulness around a sense of humor. These are all parts of creativity. The resources and strengths that we all have in this domain need to find a way to be nurtured and brought out. And that's one of the ways that a caring relationship through spiritual care can help. It's not just about activities for activity's sake, but rather, what are the ways to allow someone's natural creativity to emerge so that maybe even they will be surprised by it. And then we have our last domain, the domain of something bigger. And this connection might be religion, might be just the universe, a concept in general. It might even just be a sense of the sacred. Whatever it is unique to each person. And some might have no connection with something bigger, that they're incredibly pragmatic and practical and have no time for the idea of something bigger than they are. And that's okay too. This is not, in fact, none of the domains are meant to be a template that everybody has to check and be strong in, like a strong battery in every domain all the time. That's not realistic. It's not how we are as humans. We're going to have peaks and troughs. We're going to have times of lows as well as highs. And they will show up in different ways in our relationships with all of these domains, as will every older person. So there's no right or wrong to connect to. There's no right or wrong to spirituality. One of the ways, I heard a beautiful thing, someone said that they didn't have a connection to religion or even think about something bigger, but they always felt like they had a guide with them. So that's another way that spirituality can show up in terms of something bigger, of someone feeling like they have an angel presence or the presence of a loved one looking out for them. That's also something bigger. So you can see now how things start to intertwine. The ability for nature to promote awe and inspiration is also something bigger. The sense of a loved one looking after you, a loved one that has died looking after you, is connected with the domain of others. So none of these things exist in isolation from each other. They all intertwine. But for the purpose of clarity, we like to call them 5 distinct domains. But in reality, the beautiful ebb and flow and moving throughout is always present, always present. So what do these 5 domains, what can they really help us with in terms of specifically caring for older people? Well, we can use the knowledge and insights that we glean from conversations, and we can create a reflective state to help deepen the conversation, to begin and deepen the conversation. I've got some thought starters here for you, and you might have heard yourself or others use these in establishing deeper conversations. What makes you feel most like you? These are great questions, by the way, to ask yourself. What makes you feel most like you? What is that? What do you do that makes you feel like you've filled your cup? That's an important clue into your spirituality. Is there something that makes you look forward to getting out of bed in the morning? Now, as I wrote this particular prompt, it made me think of the opposite, because I know that for many older people, especially at a certain part of their journey, they start to wonder what will get them out of bed in the morning. They might say, nothing. I don't want to get out of bed in the morning. And we can see that with that, there's a disconnect. There's a disconnect in their sense of self, in their sense of creativity. And so to help that person, you might like to go back to, for example, what makes you feel like most like you. What's most important to you is the beautiful question. What gets you through hard times? And the honest question of, do you miss something you've always done? You know, the transition into aged care can be so incredibly and profoundly traumatic for so many people. But we have to be able to have a conversation that's held beautifully with care to help people talk through and understand what it is that has made that transition traumatic. What are they missing? So you can see how the 5 domains of spirituality, of the framework of ConnecTo, is both a way to have the conversation. It's also a way to lead the conversation towards. And it's also in some ways the answers. If I already know about someone, their love of nature, for example, and one day this person is telling me they don't want to get out of bed, then I can make a connection myself and look for ways to bring nature into the relationship that day explicitly. How to use what we know, the insights and knowledge that we've gained from ConnecTo, to really understand how to handle spiritual distress. Making sure that we're listening actively, that we're allowing the person to feel heard and valued and validated. These prompts probably are very familiar. You know, it sounds like you seem really sad about. I'd love to know more about that. I can hear you're really missing. I can hear your passion for. You know, these are all ways that we can play back and allow the person to know it's safe and fun, perhaps, to have a conversation about this. So now we return to this image and we think about who this person is and what they value. And we think back to their dirty fingers and their dirty fingernails and the love that that might represent for their work in the garden, or pottering in the backyard, tinkering with mechanics. But certainly no matter what the passion, there's enough time to enjoy the sun on the back, the apricity, to enjoy the little cuddle, the little smooch with this little sweetheart. The things that we can learn, the insights we can gain when we think about spirituality as these 5 domains and how they're connections. We've got some resources to support you to learn more about ConnecTo. There are 3 things here. The first is, if ConnecTo is something that's of interest to you that you would like to be able to use across the organisation, that you see the worth and the value of that, then you may, and you're a member, you may like to tune into the replay of a special that we did as a community of practice about using ConnecTo in an organisational setting. We've got the Leader's Guide. That's the second image you can see on your screen. That steps through all aspects of ConnecTo, including all of the questions to ask when doing a first screening, because ConnecTo is both a screening tool that can be used, as well as this incredibly relaxed and informal conversation tool. And the third is a more expansive journey into ConnecTo than certainly what I've provided for you today, which is, you know, by necessity, just a small snapshot of what ConnecTo is. But the full ConnecTo experience can be done through our website as an e-module. It's a 40-minute duration. It includes some small exercises as you go. And I believe that that is also a members only benefit. If you're an affiliate, you will also get that benefit. Right. Well, let me stop my screen there so that we can open up for Q&A. I'd love to get your thoughts on if this is new to you, if it's not new to you, but you haven't had a chance to look at it as a more conversational tool, if you only know it as the screening tool. As a screening tool, we recommend that someone with spiritual care practice is the person that undertakes that. But when we use ConnecTo as just an informal conversational tool to get to know someone, to be able to establish a reflective conversation, that can be done by anybody, and anybody that has good listening skills, someone who's able to play back. It can be used in families. It's a terrific thing to be able to do around the table, to learn more about each other, to understand how over time our roles and responsibilities shift, and that can present us with a new answer to the question, who am I? And ConnecTo is just such a delightful way. It's non-invasive. It's good for every culture. There's no one that it misses out on. It's totally inclusive. And I just encourage you to really think about how you can use the example of ConnecTo as a way to get to know someone, a way to know what's most important for someone, and to encourage the teams that work with more closely with older people to do that as well. So we've got a few people in the room. Anyone want to jump in with a question or a comment or an observation? Please do. Marnie has put a note in the chat. Everybody, please notice that. around the e-learning module. That was the third image on the resources slide that I just showed you. It's free for members and available for non-members at $25, which is terrific. Okay. We're coming up to 1:30, so I know that
Hi, Jackie.
Hi.
This is
Hi,
Ruth.
Bruce.
I just have a question in terms about the e-modules. Do you get a certificate when you complete that can be used towards professional development points?
I'm going to say yes, you can.
Okay.
And Marnie has just confirmed it as well. So if Marnie says it, it must be true.
Okay, excellent. I'm a diversional therapist. So it's great to hear this perspective and just a much broader understanding and interpretation of spirituality of a person, because often I work in a hospital setting, particularly. It's a very narrow in terms of whether somebody has a spiritual belief rather than the whole aspect that you've outlined in the 5 different domains. So it's nice to hear you explain those in a very clear manner and just outline how important they are to a person, and the term spirituality connected with it.
Yes. Yeah. Thanks for that, Ruth. Yes. I imagine that you'll coming from a hospital environment, yes, you would notice the difference. Would anyone else like to make a comment or ask a question? Here we've got a comment in the chat. Not a question, just a comment. Thanks for taking us through today. It's a great tool to connect to and get to know the whole person. Yes, it is. Appreciate your time sharing with us, Jackie and team. Thank you very much. Thank you for that. It is very much a whole person, approach, which is really, we talk about person-centered care. What I love about ConnecTo is that it really, walks the talk. It's truly person-centered care. Just a couple more minutes if anyone else would like to say something or share something with the group.
Just a quick one, Jackie. I just wanted to check with you. I have it's the Leader's Guide,
right?
2018 revised edition. I was just thinking it would be a nice thing to take some of our volunteers through. What do you think about that?
I think that's a great idea. I think that's a great idea because as I said, if you're wanting to use it as the official screening tool in an organization setting, then you really want someone who has got some background as a spiritual care practitioner.
Yeah, so I actually do, I'm a pastoral care and I do our spiritual assessments. And actually, after going through this with you and having a look through here, I'm thinking I want to rejig the way they're laid out or the way I go through that with them. But also, I just think it's a nice way to sort of structure for some of our volunteers who are still learning the ropes, their conversations with our residents.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you're allowed to set your own parameters around that. I'm talking to Christy, aren't I?
Yes, sorry.
No, that's fine. That's fine. Christy, you can set your own parameters. So, for example, you can make it clear what the conditions are that would make someone refer a conversation on. You can decide how you want to teach it, if you like.
Yes.
So the only time we get very specific with you is when it's done through an organizational system. But when it's through a volunteer structure, you're automatically going to make it a much more informal conversation anyway. So you're really just using it to provide volunteers with good prompts to be able to start the conversation. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's great. Thank you.
Yeah. 1:31, everybody. So we've actually come to the end. If you have something to say, jump in now, because I'm on the roll to say goodbye. But it's been wonderful to have a room full of you today with an interest in ConnecTo. As you can tell, I'm pretty passionate about it. I see it only as a force of good. So thank you very much, everybody, for joining us today. I hope you will investigate some of those resources and just think about some of the things that we've talked about today. Thanks very much. See you next time.